Good morning. Today is the 23rd of Teves, the 4th of January. And we are continuing with the mitzvah of sanctifying God. So, as I was walking here, I thought of something more that could explain these two times in the morning prayers that we sacrifice ourselves. I didn't notice it before. But in both places, this is when we hide our face, as it were. We conceal ourselves. So when we say Shema, we do this. And when we fall on our face, as it's called, Nefilas Apayim, so we do this. And most people go further down. Now, the difference would be exactly what are we covering up? Are we covering up the mind, which is what you do with covering the face? Or are we covering the heart? And so this motion of covering is to cover the midos. And the reason for this, the midos, the emotional attributes, the heart's emotional attributes. And the reason for that is because the higher unification is fueled by the mind, so it's a sacrifice of the mind. And we'll see a little bit more about it today. Meaning we're sacrificing ourselves in our mindset. And we said that this is what leads to new insight through wisdom. That's where we ended yesterday, with the unification of wisdom and understanding that comes as a result of it. So the father is inspired and connected to the mother because of this new insight. And we see that it was very interesting. I'm opening up parentheses here. In one of my classes this week, people asked me, well, they sort of came to the conclusion themselves, which means that I built it well. Why is there a period of separation between husband and wife during Nida? Who's it for? So it's very common today to understand, and that's how women describe it even. They say it's a period of renewal. And then when you are again together, then there's more energy. It's renewed. The whole relationship, the physical relationship, is renewed. So I had a group of men that I was teaching. I said, who is this for? Is this for the woman who needs a renewal, or is it for the man? So Baruch Hashem, it hit them suddenly, and they said it's for the man, it's not for the woman. Because for the woman, it's a curse. Right? This was her punishment. This was Eve's punishment. She doesn't need it. As far as the woman is concerned, I'm not saying that she doesn't need some distance once in a while. But the woman lives off of the connection. So if you take the connection away, even just the physical connection, and especially since most men don't understand that if there's no physical connection, there has to be a lot more emotional connection, a lot more spiritual connection, then it's a very painful period for her. It's at least a week or 2 weeks or however long it lasts. It's very difficult. So anyway, getting back to here. So here the father, the chokhmah, the wisdom, receives new insight because of this self-sacrifice. The sacrifice here is to sacrifice what you know already. It's like to open yourself up again, like you're a tabula rasa in a certain sense. You're like a clean slate again, and you're ready to be inspired with something new. Of course, here you're not a completely clean slate, but that's what we explained yesterday, that the infinite can only dwell within chokhmah, within wisdom. El and Sof only can dwell within. Again, it's only an inkling of it, but it's something. And then he passes it on to Beina, to the mother principle, and then from their unification, a new character is born in the person. So that is the complete cycle. So anyway, getting back to, that's called the higher unification. The lower, that sustains the worlds. The lower unification, which is what gives birth to new souls, it says. New souls would be not just children that are born, new souls is also people who convert. It's any kind of renewal in people's behavior, their emotions, the way they feel. It could be that they understand many things, but to convert, you need to more than understand. You have to actually commit yourself to it. So it's like the body. The body has a change. So when we're sacrificing the mind, we cover up the eyes. When we're sacrificing the emotional attributes, that's the lower unification. So we do this, and we're actually covering up the torso. That's the idea behind it. So I was just reading in the Ari again, and it sort of struck me In any case, let's continue. So with no page numbers here. I'm not sure we read this or yeah, we did. We read this. We read this part. Hold on. It's a little confusing here. Yeah. So the Beina is Hu B'chinat Yesh, next page. This is the page that starts with Beina involves drawing a concept down to oneself, getting a handle on it, as it were. Vehu B'chinat Yesh. The Beina is Yeshut. It's Yesh, which means being. You can't not have identity. You have to have identity. It's not the Yesh. Okay, let's say it like this. What? You have to have. Yeah. In the future, Hashem will give you Yesh Olamot. It says, "Lanchilo Ava Yesh," to give to those who love me. Yesh. So Pshat is going to give you being. What does that mean? This is a concept that we talk a lot about in our school of psychology. But a person cannot have identity. You have to have an identity. If you grow up and you have no identity at the age of 16, 17, 18, then you're in real trouble. You have to have an identity. You could change that identity maybe, but you have to have it. So we're not against being, we're not against identity, we're just against this taking over your being. Right? That this becomes who you are. You also have to balance the being. That's why wisdom and understanding work together. Understanding is the being, and wisdom is the non-being. It's the ein. It's the canceling of my being. I have to be able to control my identity. And again, the identity has to be something positive. What we're afraid of is that you'll build an identity out of your cravings, and then you identify yourself with what your bodily needs are, or even your intellectual needs. The being has to be something. The identity has to be something sacred, something holy, and so we're very. Like when I grew up in America, so everybody had posters of singers, of famous singers or rock stars or whatever on their walls of their room. That's the type of America that I grew up in. Maybe they still have that. I don't know. And we want a person to have the Rebbe's picture up on the wall. We want them to have it. Meaning, I want my child to look up to the Rebbe. Okay. I want him to have a role model. He has to have role models. He has to want to be something. And if he doesn't have that identity, he can't develop properly. But identity has its limits. And the limits are that it's very difficult to break out of the identity. It's very difficult to renew it. It's very difficult. So that's why you have to have wisdom also, which is free of identity, which is free of this being. And therefore it doesn't have a comprehension through Bina, through understanding. You can't get a comprehension of the infinite light. And then Chokhmah is united with Bina. The mother is united with the father. The wisdom is united with the understanding, the father with the mother. So we did mention this yesterday, so let's just read it quickly. So the connection between them is called the 32 pathways of wisdom, as it's known in the 32 mentions of God's name Elokim in the first account of creation. The Bitpatchan Lamed Vetshvilin Me'aba Le'ima creates 32 pathways between the father and the mother, between wisdom and understanding. As we said, it gives new insight to Za and Malchus. It gives new insight to the two lower letters of Hashem's name, Vav and Hey. Za, Zeir and Pin, the smaller countenance, which is everything from loving kindness all the way to foundation, and Malchus, kingdom, which is the Nukva, the feminine counterpart. Shem Pchinat Amidot, Chesed v'Gvura, and so on. That they are the emotional traits, loving kindness and might, Chesed v'Gvura, and so on. Da'ainu atam v'askala lamidot al pi hasaga be'or ein sof. Because now what they have, like we said, you're breaking out this new way that you feel is not how you feel when you are limited to this life, when you look only at the confines of what it means to live now, I always take it to that, but it's many, many other things as well. It's just for anyone even thinking about helping their friend, that's already breaking out of the confines of the limits that the body imposes. Just even helping someone is going beyond. Altruism is going beyond. And if it's real altruism, the person is willing to sacrifice themselves for someone else, all the more so. And we'll see this. It's a very important thing. It's a very, very important sikha from the Rebbe about, and everybody says it's tied into an event that happened in his childhood. He was very young. I think he was 12 or 13 when this happened, and he jumped into the river, into the Dnieper, in Dnepropetrovsk, in Yekaterinalsk, however they called it back then, that city where he grew up, and he saved someone. It wasn't even a Jew as far as I know. It was a child, I think, just a child who fell in. And the Rebbe gave a very important sikha about what does it mean, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Do not stand on your fellow's blood. Meaning that you're not allowed to ignore when someone is in dire need, and you have to sacrifice yourself. There's a whole question. The question is, what if I'm not sure? This is the question the Rebbe asks. It's a very interesting question. He says, what if I'm not sure that I can help? Like this kid fell into the river, and he's going to drown. Now, I don't know how good a swimmer I am. And what I also don't know is, am I going to get to him on time? And the result of all this could be that I'll die. So am I required to sacrifice myself to save another person? So the Rebbe comes up with at least Yeina shel Torah, he writes. He writes that this is the inner teachings of this whole sugya. He doesn't want to say a psak, because the Rebbe was very careful not to rule on things, because he didn't feel that that was his duty. And he writes that here we follow the principle of the Baal Shem Tov, that if you see something, it means it's relevant to you.
It's a message.
It's a message. So if you, and in this case, that's exactly what happened. They said that what happened was that nobody even noticed that this little kid had fallen in. The Rebbe was the only one who noticed. And so he wasn't, it wasn't, I don't know if it was like a spring, and it was, and the river was, a river that big doesn't gush, but it moves very, very quickly and it's very powerful. So I don't know if it was, I don't remember if it was in spring, if it was in late summer. I don't know when this happened and how dangerous it was to jump into the river at that time. But the Rebbe did. He was the only one who saw it, apparently.
And so, that doesn't answer. In other words, the Rebbe's question is, if there's a suffix,
right, whether you can help or not.
So
you should, because Hashem is showing you. You're the one who saw it, because you're the one who can do something. The reason I brought this up is because to see is wisdom.
So what is that?
To see, to be able to see. Wisdom is seeing, and understanding is hearing. And he uses specifically, you saw.
Yeah.
Why you saw this? Because this is an inspiration for you to act. That's exactly like what we're just saying here, that when you do Nefilat Apayim, or when you do Shema, it informs, it inspires the attributes that you have already, your character already, to do something that goes beyond its limits. It comes out of itself. ולזאת בכדי שיהיה ייחוד האבא ואמא צריכה להיות הערה חדשה והחוכמה מאור אינסוף שהוא למעלה מעלה מהחוכמה לאין קץ ותכלית. And for this to happen, for the emotional attributes to receive something new, there has to be a new unification in father and mother, in Chokhmah and Bina. And this new unification comes from that sacrifice of the mind that you do during Kriya Shema. He doesn't say that it's Kriya Shema, but we're saying that's how he started the whole thing. There's two places. So really, the sacrifice of Kriya Shema is what gives new mind, new understanding. And I said, if you don't know how to do it, you have to learn how to do it. But really what it means is to nullify yourself completely. That's what we do during Kriya Shema. It needs das. Das needs to be there. What? That's the communion. Communion itself is called das. The connection itself is called das. It needs Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the explanation. You need to have some image of Moshe Rabbeinu inside. The image of Moshe Rabbeinu is always that I'm serving Hashem. That's what Torah tzivah lanu Moshe. The Torah. Anyway. So if you don't do this when you're saying Kriya Shema, you're missing out on the new inspiration that comes every single day. Like this is like the linchpin of all innovation in Torah. How a person says Kriya Shema. And how do we know that? Because Kriya Shema is Docha Talmud Torah. That saying Shema in its proper time is more important than learning Torah. We have a story in the Gemara. It doesn't mention all these things here, but this is well known. There's a story in the Gemara. There's many stories in the Gemara about this, but in Brachos there's a whole section where they describe how some of the great Tanaic sages, the sages of the Mishnah, how they said Kriya Shema. And so there's a famous thing that Rebbe, how do we even know that you have to cover your eyes? You cover your face. So we know that, by the way, if you're in the morning with the talis, you cover your entire head, because your head is covered anyway, and you continue to cover it. So it's really covering everything. So it says that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the redactor of the Mishnah, in his base midrash, they wrote the Mishnah, he would teach, and in the middle of teaching, he would just say the verse and cover his eyes. Because he was of the people that don't need to stop in order to pray. There's many people whose Toratam Omanutam, that their Torah is their occupation. And in the time of the Mishnah, they held that if the Torah was your occupation, you didn't have to pray every day. Because they didn't stop from learning. They learned all the time. So because they were learning Torah all the time, they were patur, they were exempt from having to pray 3 times a day. But Shema they're not exempt from, because that's a mitzvah from the Torah. So he used to say Shema. How did he say it? So he would be teaching, and in the middle of teaching, he'd suddenly cover his eyes, say Shema, and continue. And so we see from that the Shema is the inspiration for all the learning. It's higher. And as we explained in the mashal, the analogy of the sun's rays, going back to that, won't go back now. And this requires sacrifice, self-sacrifice, which also is greater, it transcends the intellect. And what it really means, what does this self-sacrifice mean? That I transcend my animal soul, that I transcend my bodily needs, my bodily life. So I have moments in which I do this. And what are the moments? The first moment is Kriyat Shema, when I say the Shema. And then I transcend it, and then my divine soul is higher than my animal soul.
The divine soul is always higher.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I don't experience it. Wait, which direction did I go? I went in the wrong direction. I think I went in the wrong direction. Okay, it's here.
You should be on now.
Yeah, here it is. Yeah. Can you read this? Moreover, by its own nature, the godly soul itself is rooted above the level of Chokhmah. So the divine soul itself, its root, is higher than wisdom. Where does the divine soul come from? It's a chelek Eloka mimal. It's a part of God above. And when you say part of God above, we don't mean that there's a big, as they say, spaghetti monster in the sky, and I took one string out of it. No. What we mean is that it transcends even the divine soul. Even the wisdom, even the conscious level of my connection to God. So that's my wisdom. The divine soul is higher than that. What is it? So if it's higher than wisdom, what is it? It's what we call crown. If it's higher than wisdom, we mean that it's crown. It's super conscious. It transcends the conscious levels of our intellect. Because it is a part of God above. And he himself is of course higher than wisdom, because and he says here, to an infinite degree, right? To an infinite degree, there's no connection. But again, we're not talking about God himself. We're talking about how God manifests in reality, how God is revealed. אלא שיש בה חוכמה ומידות. But the divine soul has intellect, wisdom, and emotional attributes. It possesses them. It's not what it is. You can't say my divine soul is my divine emotional attributes. That's very good. You have that. But that's only something that it possesses. והם רק כלים, it's only its instruments. כמו ש10 ספירות שלמעלה הם רק כלים וגופה דמלכה. In the same way that even the 10 sfirot of the world of emanation, which corresponds to wisdom, right? Emanation is wisdom. Atzilus, right, is chokhmah. And then Bria is Beina. And Yetzira is Za. And Malchus is Za is from Chesed to Yesod. Vak. And then Malchus is Asiya, right? That's the basic correspondence. So in the same way that it's like that by us, it's also by Hashem. Meaning that the world of Atzilus, even the world of emanation, is only an instrument, of course. The world of emanation is like the wisdom. So we have to end here. And hopefully we'll finish this tomorrow and on Sunday. What? Right. From Chokhmah. Yes, it says that. The Moshe Rabbeinu was very unpractical. He didn't understand this world. That's one of the sayings in the Ramah Chotiyot.
Thank you very much for reading it in Hebrew.
I read it every time.
What?
I think I read it every time. What do I know? I'll see you tomorrow.